Well met by moonlight, dear ones. I am Curiosity, and this is my jamboree. A firelit gathering for explorers of the uncanny, the frightening, and the hard to explain. Tonight, we revisit a tale I've told before. A viewer called Well This Is Weird 20 posted a story on Let's Not Meet about a month ago, telling us about a pair of upstairs neighbors whose inconsiderate behavior turned out to be explained by what OP described as a dance cult. If you want to hear the first part of that story first, the video in which I narrated it is in the description. In any case, things have advanced. And with Well This Is Weird's kind permission, I bring you the conclusion of the tale, or at least the continuation. So settle in by the crackling fire, lean in close, clutch your hot cocoa close so you can take in its rich aroma, and let's begin. For those of you who are familiar with my unsettling neighborly encounters, I have a mix of both terrifying and somewhat encouraging updates to share. On Monday, my super came to replaster my bedroom ceiling. First he said that my neighbor told the contractors she has a lot of plants because she makes bush medicines. She's also told him that dancing is a part of her professional practice as a healer for people who are in bereavement after the loss of a loved one. So my friend and I weren't far off when we made the connection between her, ecstatic dance, and compassionate death affiliations. I showed him new cracks in my living room ceiling that are growing in size and number by the day. He told me to send videos of the cracks to building management, but management suggested I start with a handwritten note by their door explaining how their behaviors are wreaking havoc on my life. Since the super was working in my apartment, my neighbor was actively bumping music and jumping. I wrote a note in which I requested she reduce the volume of her music and be mindful of the intensity of her activities. I explained that the jumping or dancing was causing significant new cracks in my living room ceiling, and I offered for her to speak with me directly if needed. While I was reluctant to suggest this, I knew she might try another stalking trick if I didn't give her the option up front. So I sent the note. After 90 minutes, my super said he had to leave for an hour while the plaster dried, but he'd be back soon. Of course, my neighbor chose the end of this time frame to come down when I was alone. When I opened the door, she again had the biggest fake smile and said, "Hi," then waved the note. "First of all," she said, "I want to thank you for your open communication. That's so important and so rare in our city." Fake flattery. She admitted that she dances, which she has to do for her mental health, but she claimed that she only dances in the mornings for 30 to 60 minutes, 90 minutes max. I knew she was lying, so I said that her actions are affecting my mental health. She followed up with a range of excuses, including that they've been in the process of rearranging furniture and unpacking boxes, and they sometimes watch movies in the evening with their loudspeakers. I showed her the cracks that were immediately visible from the doorway area. She pointed to one and said, "See, we used to have one table over there, but now we have two due to the furniture rearranging. So maybe that's the reason. We also have cracks in our ceiling, and we all have to share this space." I asked her about hosting any large events in the last month, which she flat out denied. She briefly mentioned that she does sessions, but didn't elaborate further. The following suggestion I later realized was entrapment. My neighbor said she would give me her phone number, go upstairs, lower the volume, then I should text to let her know if I could still hear it. Thankfully, my super came back while she was in the process of sharing her contact information. She immediately tensed up, quickly gave the number, and then scurried off. As she passed my super, she randomly blurted out, "We're best friends now," referring to me and her. My super and I both very aware of the antics, so of course he didn't buy that manipulation tactic. I texted her that I couldn't hear the music now, to which she responded, "So glad to hear that. Thanks again for opening a line of communication. I'm always happy to chat. Hope you have a lovely day." Prayer hands and a heart emoji. In retrospect, I think she wasn't playing the music at all. I also felt like our conversation was riddled with gaslighting, misdirection, and flat-out lies. I was somewhat confused, but I know what I've been experiencing, and I have plenty of evidence to prove it. Within hours of our conversation, my neighbor started up the loud music and dancing, as if nothing happened. I was furious. I took new audio recordings and immediately emailed building management with my new evidence, footage of the ceiling cracks, along with a photo of my note. I explained that my neighbour was kind, though somewhat misleading, and expressed interest in accommodating my requests. I also said her behaviours were continuing as normal, despite the false claims that she would take my experience into account. The building manager said to keep her updated, but it was clear she assumed the situation would be resolved on its own. Nope. My neighbour continued with the incessant bass-heavy music and jumping shenanigans the next day. And the day after, I continued to document everything. On Wednesday evening I went out for a quick errand, and again was a victim of the stalking tricks. She ran into me as I was entering the building, waited until I passed her on the stairwell, and then spoke up. She acknowledged that I've probably still been hearing her activities the past couple of days, that I will continue to hear them for the next few days, all due to rearranging furniture. She said the coffee table had been sold that day. Not true, I was working in my living room all day, and would have heard such a commotion in the stairwell. I said yes. I've been hearing her loud and clear. Shortly after this in-person encounter, my neighbour went on to host a party. I heard people in the stairwell who seemed unfamiliar with whose apartment they were even visiting, and one guest introduced herself as a friend of someone else. While the music was much lower, the group began running back and forth overhead. Hearing these strange activities without the music was somewhat creepier than with the music. I took more recordings, then retreated to my bedroom. But of course, the group decided to migrate to their patio, right above my head again. By 10:30 p.m., I'd had enough. They were no longer dancing, but the group's chatter along with ethereal music, female soprano singing vocalizations, was too much. I sent her a text. I explained that I understand she has every right to host guests in her space, but I was perturbed by the way she'd said to my face that any excess noise I might hear in the coming days was from rearranging furniture. I said I could hear music and conversations very clearly, as the noise filters through my AC unit. I also said to please let me know if they will be hosting events in the future, so I'm not caught off guard. While my neighbour didn't respond that night, within minutes of my sending the message, the group began to sing the Happy Birthday song, in the most somber way I've ever heard it sung. I was able to record the second half of it. They sang in a monotone, and there was no clapping, cheering, or any standard signs of merriment that occur after singing the song. The following afternoon, my neighbour sent me a wall of text, in which she continued to lie. She said that the gathering was very small, only 4 friends, so it didn't cross her mind to let me know when she saw me earlier. She also said it was the first time they'd hosted more than 2 people over the entire year. I honestly had to laugh at that. She said when she first saw my text they lowered the music volume and told the friends to quiet down, so she admitted that she saw my message, but made no mention of any birthday affair. As for the furniture rearranging, she explained that it's been part of a longer-term project, and added more lies like how they just received a dining table and bookshelf they'd been waiting on for 8 months. Not only would I have seen such large packages in the stairwell, but also why share so much irrelevant information if being truthful? Finally, my neighbour said that they will be hosting 2 more events next week. Another small gathering of 4 friends next Wednesday in honour of her partner's birthday, and a larger gathering on Friday, again for his birthday. Like I said, she made no mention of singing Happy Birthday the night before. Who would host 3 birthday parties over 2 weeks? It was all false. She followed up 5 minutes later with a second text that explained she was late to respond because she's been in back-to-back sessions. So I finally had written evidence of her talking about these sessions. I didn't respond to the text. I refused to engage her or her partner any further. They continued to play music and stomp around that evening, but I had my boyfriend and a friend over, who heard everything, and validated me that all of this is absolutely maddening. On Friday, I finally called my building manager to explain everything. She needed to understand that something very strange and potentially dangerous is going on above me. Thankfully, I was finally believed. It turns out my building had no idea that she was running some form of business and hosting group events. I thought they at least had a vague awareness. The building manager said they would get the attorney involved ASAP to review their lease contract and pursue action. She asked for all my evidence, including written communications, a personal written account of verbal communications, audio recordings, and footage of ceiling damage. I've been taking videos of the ceiling cracks over the past few weeks to demonstrate how quickly they're growing. I made a Google folder that divided each category, dated every piece of evidence, and sent. I was so relieved. It felt like some form of action was finally in motion. I assumed the building attorney was working on a case against them over the weekend, so I ignored their relentless music and jumping. But today, Sunday, my neighbours have been hosting yet another gathering since 11:30 a.m. I've been hearing heavy bass, sporadic jumping, and chatting on their patio for going on 7.5 hours now. While I've continued to collect my evidence, I decided to wait until tomorrow to check in with management. Around 5 p.m, I was quietly sitting on my couch, when out of nowhere I heard the door open from above. Someone jogged down, and then pounded on my front door. I didn't move a muscle. The person on the other side waited for about a minute. I thought I heard keys jingling, and then they slowly retreated back upstairs and shut the door again. Honestly, I have no idea what's going on now. The music and jumping increased after the knocking incident. Maybe they were testing if I was home? But I'm rattled by how I'm feeling watched when I'm minding my own business. At the same time, I want to keep laying low to protect myself. I still have very little information about this group. They're clearly escalating. 3 events planned within 1 week, despite added pressure from everyone around them. In the meantime, I edited a new video with my recent recordings, including the creepiest happy birthday of all time, footage of the living room ceiling damage, audio recordings from the gatherings. Whenever my neighbours succeeded in making contact or I'm notified about a solid resolution, I will update the post. And OP has shared some footage I will play for you now, where you can clearly see the ceiling cracks and hear the noises coming from the apartment above. A few days later, there came another and hopefully final update. Tuesday evening, my boyfriend and I were making dinner when we began to hear a standard outburst of stomping and clomping overhead. While I've continued to document the most egregious incidents since building management promised to pursue legal action, I've also tried to block out some of the sounds for the sake of my mental health. My boyfriend pointed out the shenanigans from above. He was genuinely startled, to which I replied, "I told you, it's maddening." About 15 minutes after the upstairs settled down, my flimsy front doorbell rang. I crept over to look through the peephole and cringed. My neighbours were on the other side of the door, standing like statues, with hands behind their backs and heads cast down. Their determined stance signalled that there was no way that they would leave until I answered. If I chose to ignore, I knew they would either return, send a text, or stalk me on the street again. Since my boyfriend was present, I figured this confrontation was the safest option. So I waved him over with fear in my eyes that conveyed all he needed to know. When I opened the door, there were no fake smiles. However, in typical fashion, my neighbours began the conversation with a misdirection. "I just wanted to check in with you, since you never responded to my text," the woman said. "Was there something in the language, or—" Keep in mind, our final text exchange had been over 2 weeks prior, so I knew that was not the point of their visit. I told her the language was fine, I just didn't know what to say. From there, the gaslighting and denial campaign took off in full swing. I told my neighbours we'd just heard commotion minutes before their arrival, which elicited reactions of pure shock. "We were just drinking tea," chuckles. "Yeah, we were just sitting on the couch drinking tea." The rest of the conversation, which I tried to end 3 times before they finally got to the point of their check-in, went similarly. Every statement I made was returned with expressions of bewilderment, as if I were speaking in tongues. And every response was riddled with lies. At times, the couple would accidentally contradict themselves, such as, "That one Wednesday party was the first time we had people over in 2022. Since 2020, right, since 2020. And we didn't have any other parties that weekend, especially not on Sunday. Sunday is when we have our dance class. Yeah, and we were hungover on that Sunday from our party." They also claimed they were too old to be partiers, even though they allegedly held 3 birthday parties in honour of the guy. Since my neighbour is a dancer, Her body language became amusingly expressive, as if her motions would somehow sway my opinions. At what point, the woman said, "I think we should resolve this right now," while undulating her arms towards herself, then my direction. It looked like she was attempting to send energy waves at me. "How about this?" she proposed. "How about one of you? You?" she said, motioning at my boyfriend with both arms open. "Come up to our apartment right now and walk around," swirling finger in a clockwise circle above our heads. I could tell she really wanted to invite herself into my apartment, but she sensed that wasn't an option given my stoic demeanor throughout the entire pandering episode. I told her no. We were making dinner when they interrupted. At this point, my neighbors finally admitted why they'd come. They said they'd received a letter that was aggressive and included additional wild accusations. The guy asked point blank, "Did you involve the building?" I told them I did, because I was confused, and they'd not listened to my requests. I also said that I genuinely don't know what the letter says. The building manager told me to tell them that it was in the hands of management now. With that, both members of the couple said, "Okay." I said, "Okay," and they awkwardly retreated upstairs. I shut the door, heart racing. I was so glad that my boyfriend was present to witness the gaslighting and validate me. Every time I interact with them, I'm left confused as to what was even said. Within 10 minutes of the confrontation, I received a call from my super. He said that, presumably after our talk, the couple called him and asked what was going on. He said, "I don't know. I'm just the super." They asked to schedule a meeting with him. He declined. The following day it was clear the neighbors were not happy. The woman moved their speaker and subwoofer. Yes, they admitted they have a subwoofer in their apartment, back into their living room, and bumped it so loud that the glass on my bar cart were tinkling together rhythmically. I emailed the building manager with videos of the repaired ceiling, mentioned the confrontation, and attached a couple of audio recordings of jumping that I'd taken amidst writing the note. It's true that neither my super nor I know the contents of the letter. Was it a warning or a notice that the eviction process would commence? But the building manager replied that she was sorry they came downstairs. She didn't understand why they felt the need to confront everyone, and hopefully the letter would do its job. While all of this sounds like I've made my situation worse, there's now a silver lining of hope. After the increase in music and jumping on Wednesday and Thursday, I noticed a stark change on Friday. I started to hear commotion as if the couple were either soundproofing their entire unit or in the act of moving. Think rearranging furniture, but for real this time. I heard items being dragged, loud bangs, and a power drill. The moving style activities continued throughout the weekend, including Sunday mornings, when I saw a professional cleaner working in the building's stairwell. I was leaving for a day trip. Of course, they would not be evicted at the drop of a hat. However, I think it's possible the letter angered the couple enough to make an arrangement with the building. If they leave on their own terms, they won't be penalized for breaking the lease. The only other in-person encounter I've experienced since the confrontation was on Sunday evening. My boyfriend and I were unloading our friend's car, which was parked outside the apartment building after our day trip. It was taking some time since my boyfriend couldn't find my jacket he borrowed. Since I was preoccupied by the jacket, I didn't give any thought to the neighbors. Right as we geared up to shut the car doors and say our goodbye, I looked up to see my neighbors crossing the street, about 15 foot in front of our car, while holding hands. They both looked to their left, made brief eye contact with blank expressions, and then continued forward. Naturally, this could be a coincidence, but the front window of their apartment has a direct view of the street out front. It was also somewhat late to be going out on a Sunday, and they didn't enter any of the businesses that are opposite our building. If they'd wanted to avoid me, I was quite conspicuous while holding a pumpkin, they could have walked on the sidewalk behind us. I asked my boyfriend if he saw them too. He did. I'll ask my super if he knows about any developments, including a potential move. The neighbors are still here, obviously, but in the meantime my Ring camera arrived. I'll be installing it outside my door this afternoon, which will give me a better sense of what's happening. I'll update again if I receive confirmation that they're heading out of the door once and for all. If they aren't, I expect my Ring camera will provide evidence as to how often people are participating in the jumping routines. When I woke up this morning, I immediately heard some of my overhead light fixtures shaking as the neighbours danced to music with hand drums, and a singer shouting in a foreign language. So my torture continues, but signs point to a peaceful, or at least a peace-restoring, resolution on the horizon. Let's hope that the neighbours' gaslighting tactics and persistent denials don't work on the building management. Not against all the hard evidence you've been collecting. I'll be staying in touch with Well This Is Weird 20, so if the story develops any further, dear ones, you'll be among the first to know. Until then, OP, I hope you stay safe, and don't have to worry about your ceiling, light fixtures, or glasses ever again. The sun is rising, and we're all starting to trade our cocos for mugs of freshly brewed coffee. The jamboree is at an end once more. My thanks to Well This Is Weird 20, who gave me permission to narrate their story. Remember, I upload new stories on Mondays and Fridays, so be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss out. If you have any thoughts or advice about the story I've narrated today, why not leave them in the comments below? And don't forget, if you enjoyed your time by the fireside, to help the like button to dance its troubles away. If you'd like a story of yours narrated, I have a submission form linked in the description, and I would love to learn more of your curious experiences and unexplained happenings. I will see you soon, dear ones, and until then may your nights be dark and your dreams just a little curious.